Senator Jillian van Turnhout, with 8 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I too would like to welcome the publication of the report. And Minister, perhaps I could begin by asking the Department of Justice to ensure that copies of the report are provided to survivors with no internet access, including survivors who provide testimony to the committee and I understand are yet to receive copies of the report. I too, Minister, would like to pay tribute to your own personal conviction and courage on these issues. This report established categorically what survivors and survivor advocacy groups have told us for years, that the state was directly involved and consequently complicit in the Magdalen Laundry system. And I do very much welcome the state's inclusion of all surviving women in the apology, thereby avoiding any distinction being made between survivors who were sent into the laundry system by their families and those incarcerated there at the behest of the state. I think this is a hugely important non-distinction which embraces the fact of the laundry system itself were inherently abusive rather than the abuse stemming from the women's and girls' mode of entry. In this regard, I must express my disappointment, though, that the report found little evidence of physical abuse, and this very much seems contrary to the evidence that, for example, the Justice for Magdalen group handed the committee the 12 files of supporting evidence, including 795 pages of harrowing survivors' testimonies from girls who were assaulted by nuns, often with keys and belts and other implements, and independent witnesses who attested to the truth of these stories. Or if we look at the Ryan Report, Volume 3, Chapter 18, the various documentaries and survivor testimony, it's been widely accepted that these institutions were inherently abusive. If gruelling and relentless unpaid labour behind locked doors is not physical abuse, I don't know what is. The report, in my opinion, should have been dedicated to the survivors of the Magdalen Laundry system and all those who did not survive its brutal regime. Whatever side of the political divide you fall on, and I think Senator Power very clearly articulated this earlier, I think the capacity of Enda Kenny, for example, as opposition leader in response to the Ryan Report, and as Taoiseach in response to the Cloyne Report, to speak with compassion and sincerity on subjects of the greatest sensitivity is beyond reproach. This, I think, was further exemplified when he made his considered official statement and apology on behalf of the Irish state on the evening of the 19th of February for what is undoubtedly our national shame. There has been much discussion following the Taoiseach's formal apology about whether it was good enough, sincere enough, moving enough. I can only speak personally when I say I was profoundly moved by the Taoiseach's words. But the apology wasn't for me. It was on my behalf, yes, but it was for the survivors and their families. The litmus test is them, and I was heartened and am heartened by reports from survivor advocacy groups and from the survivors' reactions to the news teams directly after the Dáil address, that the Taoiseach's sincere and heartfelt words were deeply meaningful to the survivors who feared this day would never come. But we need to learn from our past, and I've quoted here in the Seanad on a few occasions the Amnesty International report in plain sight, which responded to the Ferns, Ryan, Murphy and Cloyne's report. And in that report, and I think it's still very relevant, Colm O'Gorman, Executive Director, former Senator and Director of Amnesty International he said, the focus cannot be purely on the past, as if this history has no relevance for our society now. We must consider the degree to which this history reveals vital truths about the nature of our society today. The past only becomes history once we have addressed it, learned from it, and made the changes necessary to ensure that we do not repeat mistakes and wrongdoing. And I do find myself, and since I've been appointed Senator, I find myself questioning how much have we learned as a society and as a state when the culture of secrecy, collusion, cover-up and the lack of accountability that surrounded institutional and clerical sex abuse can still be seen in contemporary contexts. And if I look at the issues of the survivors of symphysiotomy, if I look at the treatment of asylum seekers, particularly children in the state-run direct provision centres, and Minister, we've debated this ourselves in the House, the Ryan Report of the future, in my opinion, if we don't deal with this. Having now established categorically that there was state involvement and state oversight in the Magdalen Laundries system, I think it is also important to establish whether in more recent times the state and its relevant department knowingly made efforts to deny this fact or minimise its involvement. And on that I speak, for example, of our testimony before the United Nations Committee Against Torture in 2011. There are also outstanding issues involving unnamed graves, the Bohermore Cemetery in Galway, unexplained and unregistered deaths in Hyde Park and Glasnevin. And on that point, I don't think this opportunity should be allowed to pass without commending the late Mary Rafferty on her efforts to bring the issue of the unexplained and unregistered deaths to the fore in her 2003 Irish Times article, Restoring Dignity to the Magdalens. In it, she raised allegations of the most serious order, including that the Department of Environment issued additional exhumation licences for unidentified and unregistered human remains without a full investigation of the circumstances. That such an investigation did not take place at that time and still has not taken place beggars belief. Where was the accountability then and where is it now? And the congregations, the 4 congregations, I have been very disappointed by the radio silence so far, and I do ask, where is the accountability? Where is the media and public scrutiny over the wholly inadequate apologies issued by the 4 congregations at the centre of the McAleese report? With one congregation, I read these apologies very carefully. One congregation repeated the word refuge to describe the laundries 8 times in 7 sentences. I think we've established that these institutions were anything but refuges. And the others making acknowledgement that the time they spent with us, the limitations of the care, was wrong and upsetting. And I do welcome the calls by Taoiseach Eamon Gilmore and by the Minister for Justice and Equality, Alan Shatter, that the religious congregations contribute to the compensation scheme. And I'd very much like to see that their contributions offered by the congregations in acknowledgement of their direct role in the abuses suffered by women, rather than being put on foot of pressure of demands by the state. I would like to see them coming forward. The system of redress must be prompt, it must be open, it must be transparent, fair and non-adversarial. And I do welcome the appointment of Justice John Quirke to head up the 3-month review to recommend the criteria for providing supports, payments and services to women. And there's a number of questions which Senator Power has already mentioned about statutory footing, independent appeals, and I'll be writing to the ministers on this, Minister Shatter on this issue. But I would also like to ask the Minister and you, Minister, to give full and frank consideration to the restorative justice and reparation schemes for Magdalen Laundries survivors, which has been proposed by the Justice for Magdalen's Survivor Advocacy Group. Yes, I think it's really good the report is published. I think it has very clearly proven state involvement, but it doesn't mean the book is closed. It's only a new chapter, and it's up to us now what belongs in this chapter. I think we need to support the women. We need to support the organisations who are supporting the women. And this is an area where I do believe that we can stand together and show that we have learnt the mistakes of the past. Thank you.
Thank you.